a failure in not making those marriages work?
I feel like we're all failures, not just Cody. I think that's funny because it takes two to make a relationship and it takes two to break a relationship. See, that's just, I feel like another button to push. And I'm just like, hey, why? That doesn't need to be said. And, things that he's saying, like, that doesn't need to be said. I'm like, just, guys, can you just stop? Like, this is so destructive.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we are discussing while Cody and Robyn are doing the tell-all for sister wives lying out their booties about what happened on the season, and with all of these relationships we know that what they're saying isn't the truth, right? And Cody has this cameo, and I don't think you realize, but he gets paid to speak to people and offer them advice. And generally, what Cody's advice to people is to talk about his life and ramble on. And often he's supposed to be giving them advice on birthdays or, congratulations or honeymoons or whatever, and he makes every cameo about himself. And he was recently asked to wish this couple well who was getting ready to go on their honeymoon and maybe offer us some advice about, their marriage. And Cody, oh my gosh. So on the show for years, they all never discussed sex, right? They never discussed the intimacy between anybody because apparently it made everyone uncomfortable and they didn't want to know what was going on in each other's bedrooms. And I always said that if people are okay in being a plural relationship, if you are actually okay with being in that kind of relationship, theoretically, you should not be jealous because you're consenting and you accept, right? But if you're not okay with it, it's usually a red flag that your body is telling you that something is wrong, right? And I would say that jealousy is a pretty normal human emotion. And I think that although there's a lot of people that think that, this type of polygamy where it's around this belief system and in these cults is somehow consensual, I don't think that it is. You'll never make me believe that it is. It's a lot of coercion and control and fear, and it's a whole system set up to basically turn women into cattle and property. And I think that was evidenced by Cody basically discussing how he had no respect for some of his wives recently on the tell-alls. But a couple years ago, I think I told you about how there was a story that one of Cody's friends relayed to me about how they were out to lunch with Cody. And during the course of the conversation at lunch, Cody was going on and on and on about how good getting down and dirty was with Robyn and how he couldn't get enough of it. And it was all he wanted. He was like wanting it the way that people who have substance use disorders want their substance. He was a fiend, and in a recent video that he did for somebody random on the internet who watches Sister Wives Cody went into
money on our honeymoon. And fortunately, I had a credit that took care of our lodging and a $500 credit card that pretty much was all we had. And she was complaining to me that I was starving her because I had brought a whole bunch of nuts and seeds and fruit, dried fruit. That's kind of how I travel. And that's what we were eating. And we were on honeymoon. And we were chaste, non-sexual, prior to the honeymoon. And so it was the new land of discovery. And she was frustrated that I was starving her to death. So I'm sure your situation is so vastly different from that. I'd love to give you more history on the entire experience. This is about you guys. What was fortunate about it is we just got lost in each other. And it was a weird thing that other than needing food and a ticket into an amusement park at Disneyland, we just got lost in each other. And that was an absolutely precious experience. And when you're on your honeymoon, you've got to make it about each other. A place of discovery, a place of learning and understanding and sharing, of giving and taking and sharing and receiving. I mean, it can be so absolutely beautiful. So give yourself the time. If you're going to another country, you're probably going to be touring a lot, but take the time with each other to connect deeply.
I find it amusing because firstly, he mentions that they didn't have any money and that they sort of filmed half of it, but then they only had a credit card with $500, and they had a lodging credit, i.e. TLC paid for them to stay in a hotel, and they had a per diem card that they were given for eating on a daily basis by TLC, and so he didn't pay at all for his honeymoon. It was filmed. They went out for dinner, they went to parks, more than just Disney World, but then he said that they had to get away, and they lost each other in East themselves, and, that's just a chunk of it, of him talking about the giving and the receiving and getting to know each other's beautiful experiences, and, it was their first dip in their toes of having intimacy. I don't believe that, by the way. You'll never make me believe that the honeymoon was the first time they ever did it. And can you imagine getting a cameo from Kody Brown, and he is giving you innuendo about the amazing sex that Robyn and he had on their San Diego honeymoon in California, where they were gone for 11 days. And now we know why it was 11 days, because apparently for a couple of the days they filmed, and the other 9, all they did was stay in their hotel room and front-hugged Mormon fundamentalist style on the bed. I wonder if they wore their garments. Sometimes they do that, but giving and receiving and exploring and, yes, Kody and Robyn, all they did on their honeymoon, apparently outside of those few times they filmed, was have sex. I always said that Kody was such a pervert, and I always knew he was, because I think about this a lot. Now that I'm covering this case with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, if I didn't cover these stories, I would literally never speak about these kinds of topics, because why would you speak about these kind of topics? I don't care about Kody's sex life, it's just gross. Why would I think about him in a bedroom with Robyn? I mean, do you think once they got rich they just started laying out $100 bills on the bed and rolling around and exploring and giving and receiving? Kody was asked to give a cameo about a honeymoon. And Kody's idea of a honeymoon is sex. That's what he thinks of his honeymoon. I'm just going to have as much sex as possible. I'm going to lie in a bedroom all day long, but more importantly, it's like he wants these people to know that he and Robyn had a lot of sex. Why do you need to share that with some rando that's having their honeymoon? Do you think they really want to go into their honeymoon now, thinking about Kody and Robyn having sex? And if you're Robyn, how do you feel about your husband telling everyone that all you did on your honeymoon was have sex? It's kind of like when he was talking about the divorce with Meri, and he was making a comment about how they probably went home and made love after she signed the divorce documents, and on the tell-all Meri just said that they never spoke about that publicly because it was an agreement that they didn't want it to be like that, because obviously there's already that stigma about polygamous men being creepy. And then, so he makes that comment. It's like the very first time, really, he speaks about it in a way like that on the show. And then, now that he has opened that door, apparently it's all Kody wants to talk about. I mean, he's so gross. Somebody paid $150 for him to talk about how much sex he had with Robyn on their honeymoon.
Sometimes, let me explain. Moms get a chemical dumped into them. I'm going to call it God's magic. And this chemical makes you fall in love with your children in a way that is irreconcilable when your children are born. And it makes you love unconditionally forever. And I'm jealous because it makes you... Dads have to do the tough love stuff a lot of times. Half the time I'm just overindulgent anyway. But moms empathize. They sympathize. They care. They're loving. They're understanding. And they listen instead of trying to fix the problem like dads do. And this gift that you...
So after Kody had finished talking about starving his wife Robyn, his mistress Robyn, through all of their front-hugging Mormon style on the bed, he then was making Mother's Day cameos, and in 2 of them he said this comment, which I found interesting, and it made me remember something he had said in the tell-all when he said that every single person gives you something different, and they satisfy a need in you, or they provide you with something, or they make something available to you, and you have various relationships with everyone, which is accurate, but at the same time I feel that Kody interprets relationships in a very transactional sense, like what they provide for him, not necessarily like the give and take that there is between the 2 of them. And he used to say that he did not require one wife to satisfy a desire in him. He used to always maintain that they all were a whole person, and the relationships were whole, all of them, and they didn't satisfy a need in one, and then another one, and another one. It wasn't like they were segregated as like Robyn was the sex wife, and this one was the cooking wife, and this one was the working wife or whatever. This is the head wife. He always maintained that they were all whole. So now we know that Robyn was a sex life. But then also he has a very sexist view about women, right? He said that Christine made him a meal, and he couldn't be happy because she was always complaining about how she was unhappy. And then in these cameos, he's talking about mothers, and he has this idea, this concept, that the reason why women have unconditional love for their kids is because when they give birth or they get the baby, which this would only be for a woman, by the way, there are many mothers that adopt children who can love their kids under unconditionally, and there are also many women that have children that don't love their children unconditionally. But he says that when you give birth, your body releases oxytocin and it makes you bond with your child. And I am certain there is some basis for this, but he compares the release of the oxytocin to a mother being able to love a child and be empathetic and be understanding and be patient and love them unconditionally to childbirth and the release of oxytocin. And then he says he is jealous of mothers because they can love unconditionally. And then he rationalizes his poor parenting because he says that he has to be Guy. That's the bad cop, that he's putting them in their place. He's firm with them. He's always having to run defense. He's the one that has to put him in line, which is again a very sexist view on parenting, that it's this old concept that men are detached from their kids and that their children are bonded unconditionally with their mothers. Which it's true, such as women do have relationships with their kids that are probably very different from men. But to say that men can't love their children unconditionally, I believe that is so unfair to men. And if this is how he sees his children, no wonder half of them don't want anything to do with them, with him, if his concept of parenting is that he just shows up to correct them or to discipline them, you know what I mean? Or to scold them. What kind of parent is you're missing out on all the good stuff, right? And he behaves like the wives that aren't being the ones to hold them accountable. And I'll let you in on a secret. My husband is the softie of me and him when it comes to my son. And I'm a ginormous softie with my son. But if we're trying to make my child do something, our child do something, my son knows how to manipulate daddy's buttons to not get daddy to make him do it. You know what I mean? Like if it's like you have to do your homework, he can whittle his way with daddy and he can talk his way out of it. But when it comes to me, he knows to listen to mommy. He's going to have his homework completed, and I'm not mean mom by any stretch. We don't spank. He does not receive timeouts. He does not get grounded. You know what I mean? Dads can be softies and love unconditionally and give and literally love their child more than they love themselves. That is possible. But the way that Cody perceives kids and women is so strange to me. If he is so detached and he believes that only women can love unconditionally, what does that imply about men? Does that mean that his sons then are go on to be fathers who don't know how to love unconditionally? Does this imply that he doesn't love Aurora and Brianna and Dayton and Solomon and Ariella unconditionally? Does it imply that if they do something that makes him angry, he will then unlove them? Is that how it is, that what it means? Because a child's position in the world, their way to have good relationships in life, is by having parents who model behavior to them that's safe, and that you don't leave them scarred and hurt. And a lot of us came up with parents who left us scarred and hurt, and it would seem that Cody continues this with his present children that he's staying with, because he didn't state that he can love his present kids, like the small ones unconditionally. What an empty receptacle of just disgusting nothingness. It must be completely draining to be near this man, and Robyn must really enjoy the money, so much so that she's all right with her husband, talking about starving her on her honeymoon because of all the sex they had, and then commenting on how women can love without condition, but he can't. So newsflash for Robyn, once you use up your welcome and you don't give him what he desires, and you don't bend to his demands, and you stop providing him all the sex, you're going to become as boring to him as all the rest of the women. And once your kids get to the age where they form opinions that he can't control, they will be cast aside just like the others. And there is a reason they are not on the show, and it's because Cody and him do not get along, but they won't tell you that Cody mistreats a child and an emerging young adult with autism badly. They'll never say that he's just a creep. and that these cameos are the true Cody, not the one that you see on TV. So what do you guys think of these creepy things that Cody said about his wife Robyn? About kids, about sex? Is he as gross as I think he is? Tell me in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.